Well, Harold, one of the things that we look at when we're prioritizing projects, we look at the likelihood of failure and we look at the consequences of failure. Now, of course, this will be for existing infrastructure. New infrastructure, you wouldn't necessarily have to do that type of analysis on, but this is for what's already on the ground or in the ground or above the ground that we're trying to take care of. So let's just look at likelihood of failure. We know we've got a 130-year-old water line running through downtown, and we're having leaks on that line periodically. It's got leaded joints. We just know it's near the end of its life. The likelihood of that failing is much greater than that ductile iron line that we just put in 10 years ago through a new residential neighborhood. So that's likelihood of failure. Then you have to look at consequence of failure when you're looking at prioritizing projects as well. Consequences, if that water line in that residential neighborhood fails, what's the consequence of that? Okay, you could have 15, 20, 40 houses, and the people can't get to their houses because we're in the road fixing the water line, and we have to make provisions for that. We have to shut water off to the neighborhood, and we have to make provisions for that. Okay, that's one consequence. What about another consequence where that 130-year-old water line through downtown, if that goes, what happens if we have a pipe burst on that? You shut down 4 blocks of downtown because now their primary water source is gone. We don't have a way to backfeed it. How do you measure that against the needs of the neighborhood? Certainly you have a much higher commercial impact in downtown with the consequence there. Streets are shut down, businesses likely shut down, residential neighborhood, folks are inconvenienced, can't turn on their water, can't get to and from their house. So likelihood of failure, consequence of failure. And that's generally the process we go through when we're looking at how do we prioritize those projects.
And the way you presented that would be perfect for me, unfortunately. Most political people are all over the spectrum. And so trying to figure out what they're thinking and why they're thinking it is pretty difficult sometimes. For me, exactly what you said, consequence failure. What happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? That's perfect for helping me make a decision. Now, if you're having an inexperienced counsel, you might get a different answer. If you present that information at a formal council meeting, you might get a different answer. If you have a council member that has never learned to deal with public pressure, even though they've served decades, which I've seen that, then you'll get a different answer. So to give you an example, let's say you have a council member that in his neighborhood, the majority is all about do not increase my taxes under any circumstances. And he's not willing to stand up to the public and say, but if you do this, it's going to cost you more in the long run. But if you don't do this, so he'll fight to keep that tax rate the same and probably give feedback, just put a Band-Aid on it, anything to keep them from yelling at me. And then on the other end, an experienced council member that has learned to deal with the public has the ability to go explain it to the public very well. Yes, don't be, pound wise?
Penny wise,
pound
foolish.
Don't be that.
Right.
And think about the decision here. I'm doing this for your best interest. Mm-hmm. And as long as he can explain that and defend that to the public, then he can get his answer across. I think it's very important for staff to meet with council members individually to try to get them, get the feel for where they are and what's going to be proposed, rather than doing it at a council table, because a lot of times at a council table is a performance as well as a decision. And so if you can know where they're coming from and be able to answer all their questions and help them make a good decision rather than a crazy decision based on people screaming at them, I think you'll have a better outcome.
Yeah, and I'll add one additional point on there. As staff, we're not going to go directly and talk to any city council member without at least informing our city manager that we're doing so, and that the city manager's got the opportunity to be there as
Absolutely.
well.
Or you won't be employed very long.
Exactly.
You're exactly right.